Thank you, Alexis. The next question is, now that we understand why you decided to attend seminary, what have you learned about yourself? And a follow-up question to that is, how has this year challenged you? So what have you learned and what has challenged you so far this year, this past academic year?
Yeah, what you say, for myself, you got a number of things that you're busy with already in my life, ministry, family, work, all that stuff. But seminary, like I would say for me, learning about myself is I've learned that I can do a lot more than what I thought I could. I've got pushed, but this push is so worth the reward. And this push has like been in a way so relevant to what's going on. And so the push and in all this pushing, it's a blessing behind it because it totally relates to everything that's happening. And so for me, what I've learned about myself is that, yes, like Ken, I came in thinking that I knew a lot, but obviously I didn't know much, and I still don't know much. In a lot of ways, I've been humbled. I've got a lot of humble pie in regards to things that have been said that I might have thought of it that way. And it's been interpreted to me and allowed me to look at it in a completely different context than what I maybe have been raised upon. So me learning about myself, I've learned that I'm a lot open to what I thought I was. I came in with a lot of embedded mindsets, and seminary has allowed me to look at different walks of life and understand that that's fine. To understand that who are you to judge? That's not your job, Brandon. That's God's job. Only God can do that. And so, like, seminary has just opened my eyes in a way. And so it's allowed me to understand different walks of life, different cultures, different backgrounds, folks from different, nations and different nationalities, and just be able to broaden my horizon. I've learned that I can do a lot more than what I thought I could. And I thank the Lord for allowing this push to happen because it's very relevant in its time. In this process, I'm still just learning more about myself. So I'm still learning as these readings, as these classes go on, as the challenge go on, as the push go on, I'm still learning. This year, this is the end of my first full, I'll say, academic year. And so, it has been very challenging. And I would say that, y'all, from a busy standpoint, seminary is a lot of work. And so coming in, I've heard about it, but when you see it, like when I first got in and I'm looking at the stuff we got to read, I'm like, what? What? Are you serious? Let me get an audio book. And so, I'm like, I got to find ways to maneuver around all this stuff. But as stated, like, challenge of everything, like, that it has been a reward. It has been a total, complete reward. And so I've learned to just kind of push back in this process and just soak everything in. I wish I would have kind of did that often, let's say in my undergrad and different things and other forms of education. But with seminary, you guys, I want to take advantage of the opportunities, and I want to let things soak in from everyone because it's a reason why we're all here. I'll let that sink in. It's a reason why we all here. And everyone has gifts, everyone has talents, everyone has been called in their own special way. And so, not always trying to be that smart guy in the room, but just sitting back and having some humble pie and let some others, have their points. And when you actually do, it seems like the classes and the conversations are just that much richer. We get that much riled up. Folks get riled up and we all ready to go. We all ready and pumped up and we all amped up because someone has said something. And so when we have that environment and that free space for everyone to be intertwined and for everyone to feel like that they matter, that's what I love about McCormick, is that everyone matters. It is not no big I's and little U's. It is a we as a community.
What have I learned about myself? Mostly that I'm not crazy. That a lot of these thoughts, seminary has given me words to my thoughts. So a lot of the things that I have thought, a lot of things that I have understood and seen, I now have the ability to put words to it. So that's kind of the biggest thing that's happening. Even in this moment of civil unrest, I can speak eloquently and articulate how I feel, where before it would be a lot of gibberish and I don't really know, but I can now say due to systemic oppression and American chattel is why I be smacking white girls to touch my hair. Like, so I understand where a lot of it comes from. So now seminary has given me the words that I didn't have for the action. So I no longer have to be the angry woman walking around, but I now can explain my anger and frustration. So yeah, that would be the most part that seminary has taught me, or what I have learned about myself. The vulnerability of seminary has challenged me in a way of, almost to Brandon's point, like I already knew I wasn't the smartest person in the room. I knew I didn't know everything in that space, but being vulnerable to intaking what is being told in a way that has allowed other people to be open. So I'm very much like, and you all see me in class, like, what you mean you know that? Like, what? So being able, it's challenged me to stop and say, check your environment, check their environment. Just because we're all, in this same space doesn't mean anything. So that's where the challenge has been, as well as learning to speak when it's impactful and not because no one else is speaking. So a lot of times I've learned to just wait because we're sitting in class and nobody says anything. And I'm annoyed because I'm like, y'all, we here for 3 hours, somebody speak. But even in those moments, even if I have to be the first one to speak, like, know that it's okay to be the first one to speak, but give space to other people so that no one else feels like they don't have the right to get their words heard.
I came in the door thinking that I knew a lot about everything with respect to social justice. And I was pleasantly surprised about how much I learned in PIF. It was an immersion to different authors and different ways of thinking about theology, the writing behind it, the discussions that went forward, the challenges of different perspectives of, whether it's gender identity or sexual orientation or different perspectives on race. And I think the other part that was eye-opening for me was how much I really had to come to learn and respect people from the international community and come to understand their struggle and their love for faith. Some of that I took for granted. I mean, you go to church, but it's different when you see faith emerge out of other people who are your classmates. Some of the reading that we had was challenging. All of it has been eye-opening for me. I mean, every book that I got, I tried to read as much as I could and really try to devote as much as I could in my studies. So my thirst for learning increased. It made me want to change my rhythm from watching, maybe decompressing and watching television, to decompressing and reading Howard Thurman or Angela Davis or, anybody else that we were assigned to read. It changed me that way to make me a deeper thinker. So as Brandon and Alexis were thinking, I was kind of ditto what they say. Stress. I mean, I work full time and then to come to seminary and, it's a little frustrating to try to slow down because the level of stuff that I have to deal with 9 to 5, it doesn't necessarily stop. And then, I mean, the stuff that's happening in St. Paul and Minneapolis is what I'm involved in now. And to slow down off of that or those types of things and to come to seminary, I had to try to balance and put things in perspective. And as I looked around the room with my students, I started to see a class of people who were being who they were, learning, but becoming who God intended them to be for the various ministries that they had. That didn't necessarily mean you had to preach. And so when you listen to the stories of Mary Claire or some people who made, sacrifices in their lives to be in that room, like in PIF or in other classes that we had, you begin to see it makes you humble. The stress of 2020, Alexis, I mean, you're saying LAD kind of gave us a reprieve, but I kind of needed that. I needed the balance. It's hard to go to summer school, but I wanted to go. Classes I wanted to take weren't there, but I'm still thirsty and still want to take the classes in the fall to make up. But it humbled you. It slowed me down. It made me put things in perspective, and it made me understand that my job isn't all that in a bag of chips.
I can most easily begin with how it has challenged me, and I can certainly focus on these last few months with shelter in place. I think it's been quite challenging for me personally, and I imagine for a lot of folks in our position. We feel called in some way to be active community members. We feel called in some way to not only be contemplating our faith, but then put that faith into action. And yet we've been asked to shelter in place, to quarantine. And so that's certainly been a struggle, wanting to be engaged in ways that are necessary for a community that is certainly struggling, but also knowing the most responsible thing to do at times is just to stay home and to separate yourself from others amid a pandemic. And those two dichotomies have just been particularly challenging for me. And at the same time, I've had two prayers on my heart for faith-based institutions and particularly churches. Number one is I hope that we are able to remember our current circumstances and to not go through this collective amnesia that we do very well as the United States of America. That in whether it's a recession, whether it's the civil rights movement, whether it's the new construction era, we are very quick to forget structures and systems that are oppressive at the time that they are most obvious when things go back to quote unquote normal. And we do that very well as a country. We have collective amnesia. And so that's been my prayer, that the church particularly can be as observant as possible to systems and structures that do not benefit all, that only benefit a few. And as things do go back to the status quo that we knew before March 13th, 2020, that we may pay attention. The fact that in Chicago alone, 70% of the deaths so far from coronavirus have happened in a population that makes only 32% of the entire city in the Black and African American population. That is unholy. I mean, that is evil. That the systems that are set in place are so disproportionately affecting our neighbors, and not neighbors of color, but Black and African American neighbors specifically, is something that will easily, if we're able to go into past habits, go into conversations around eating habits or access to healthcare or communities or employment or living habits, opposed to the systems and structures that make that statistic possible. And so my second prayer is that the church may be preaching a responsible word, that whatever anybody is claiming that they are receiving from God, that anybody that is proclaiming a message that they are labeling as divine, as a faith leader, I hope it is truly good, that it is not doing harm to communities. And so congregations that are trying to profess their political right to gather as an essential need and not adhering to policies that protect people and communities, that we may just be aware of that. And I think that's one of my biggest takeaways as well so far in this year's seminary, is that the ways that we are understanding God and our neighbor and our communities around us have extremely relevant and real impacts today in your community, in society, and certainly the global world. And so we are called not only to be leaders of the faith and be co-partners of leadership, but we are also called to be responsible and to do good. And good not meaning like this good-bad dichotomy, but good meaning this like overall holiness, this more like this sense of shalom, this sense of good for all. And so, that's been the biggest challenge, and then also that's kind of been one of my biggest takeaways that have just become very, very clear in the last few months of having lots of time to be reflective, literally outside of the classroom, and then trying to articulate kind of what this last year has meant.
I have learned two things about myself. First, before I come to the US, all my studies I have done in my own language, Sinhala, and this is the first time I'm doing my studies in English medium. That is really challenging for me. Before I start this academic year, I had a hesitation or and doubt regarding my English knowledge because this is the first time I'm going to do my studies on English language or English medium. But before starting and throughout this academic year, I had my total focus on my studies, and most of my, especially Blake, know about because I'm every time focused on my studies, not on other things, because I want to focus on my studies because English is a language barrier for me, and rather than theology. Anyhow, after this academic year, because of my dedication and my vision, I had effectively complete my academic year. So what I learned is not only me, this common thing, because so our dedication and our vision are important to our success. That's one of main thing what I have learned this academic year. Most of the students, I know most of the students, they are worrying about their education skills, but I'm as a first time English medium student, first time doing the course in English medium. Up to now, I am success with my learning partner Blake and also Rob and LWC community with their help because of my dedication and vision. And secondly, from my college studies, high school college studies, up to my postgraduate studies in MA in Sri Lanka, I did all the studies in balanced mentality, which is I did not want to focus only on studies and forget all other things. Because while I'm doing studies, I am a priest or minister in some other church. I have to be a balanced mentality, practical and theory both. Anyhow, before I started this academic year, I took a decision. In this academic year or in this degree, I will going to see my academic capacity, how much capacity I have within myself, and I am going to totally focus on studies because I would like to, from my high school studies time. I am a good athlete, not like this. I'm a good thing person. When I was in age 16, 18, I ran 100 meters within 12 seconds in my college. I play football and I was a captain. And because from my childhood, I had a mentality. If some person want to be a real person, he or she should be a multi-talented person. Talented means not extreme. Anyhow, he or she can manage anything. That's a real human. Because I saw so many PhD holders, they only focus on only they can do is their studies. But on the other side, they fail their life, family life for practical life for church life for they fail. That's the one reason I had that kind of mentality. But anyhow, in this academic year, I want to check my academic capacity. English is a real like a barrier to me to study that capacity. Anyhow, finally, because of a lot of people help, including my learning partner and Rob and LWC, I got to know I had a good academic capacity. That's that's the second thing what I have learned in this academic year. Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's very helpful and helpful, I think, because it resonates. I think part of what I've learned about myself, as well as what's challenged me the most thus far, will be very similar. So I'll start with what I've learned. What I've learned principally about myself, I think, over this first 6 months, is that every gift, every ability, every passion, every desire that's been placed within me was placed there for, as the scripture says, such a time as this. It's all brought me to this point, all of it. I look back on things that I was able to do or string together, or things that I was passionate about, that I was driven to do and undertake, that I had no idea why, but it was for this. So, no good gift from God goes to waste. And so I'm thankful for that. I've learned that I have the capacity to learn at this level, to be poured into and to pour into others. I've learned that I'm enough. So when it was revealed to me last year that this was a part of my journey, one of the first things that I did was, in my flesh, is I doubted that. I remember spending a few months like, but really? That can't be. I'm not going to be that person. I can do this without having to do that. And then I remember thinking, I don't know enough. There'll be theologians there that will just, far surpass anything I think I know, and I'll look like a fool, things of that nature. One of the things that I've learned is that I am enough, just as I am, just as I've been created, just with what I have right now, that I'm enough to be used and to learn and grow in this arena, in this capacity. To God be the glory. And to that end, what's challenged me is time. And so with this COVID-19 pandemic, and with so much going on from the church itself has had to transform, right? And so the world as we know it will never be, nor should it be, the world that existed prior to March 15th. It should not be. We're able to reach people that we never reached before. We're able to speak to people that we would have never spoken to before. We're able to use technology to actually touch people. But to that end, when you are a minister of the gospel in any capacity, when you lead people in a spiritual capacity, the ability to touch people, the ability to look at you face to face is critical. It's intimate, it's important, it's relational. It is what we're called to do. And when you have people that experience great loss, I lost personally someone who was a mentee of mine, and you can't even go and touch them. So I can't minister to people the same way that I would normally. Plus, I'm balancing learning at a different level because I'm a seminarian now. And then I still have people that I need to support, that I need to pour into, but I have to study, but I have to focus. How do I focus in a pandemic that I've never experienced before? When I have people that I have to help that don't know up from down, inside from outside. So the ability to focus and to manage those competing priorities, equally important, has been a great challenge. And to still being authentic hasn't been the challenge, but being authentic is easy. But managing those priorities in such a way that I'm giving my all to my studies and this call that God has led me to, as well as the other part of the call that I've been led to, and that is caring for and serving God's people in a way that's authentic, that's real, that's personal, and although we're socially distancing, is not distant in the way that it feels. So that's been a challenge in this COVID-19 world. And to Blake's point, prayerfully, because the systems of oppression and marginalization and how certain people have been ostracized and disenfranchised is glaring. And the example, of course, of how the deaths for COVID-19 within the Chicagoland community have disproportionately impacted people of color. And across the United States, statistically, it's disproportionately impacted people of color. Prayerfully, no one will forget, because what it really lends itself to is the fact that there are systems of oppression that's been put in place, which have led to those crazy statistics that we see each and every day. Something as serious as a pandemic just is a megaphone, it's a flashlight to illustrate what's already there that we haven't dealt with. And as ministers of the gospel, we're called to speak truth to power. We're called to prophetically speak to these things and to lend truth in alignment with the word of Jesus Christ. But that's all I've got to say about that. And that's what's been a challenge to me or for me during this first year.